Before you go over to the dinner today, please remember it is also election day. And so all church members, before you go over to the fellowship hall and immediately following offering, I'm going to get our ushers to come back up and hand out a ballot. It takes all of about 2 or 3 minutes. I'll give you some quick instructions. You fill out the ballot, you can leave. Okay? That's for our 2019-2020 board members. This Wednesday, we will have our second installment of our discussion series on Billy Graham. And so I hope you'll join us for that. We'll look at Billy Graham's attack on segregation and racism. So that'll be an interesting conversation. Judy is going to be taking over for Jeff and giving him a break for a month or two, and she's got a new class, a new topic that she's going to be talking about. Tell us about it.
I'll do it. I told you last week the title of especially this first lesson is, do you know the difference in a flat tire and a train wreck? Having gone through the whole cancer thing, that's a train wreck, folks, let me tell you. I struggle every day to treat flat tires like flat tires, and I think we all do. We have these little issues in our lives that we blow up like they're train wrecks. James tells us how we should address those and how we should deal with those, and that's where we're going to start. My heart goes out to these young families. My child is grown, and life is so much easier now. But you couples with your small children, come to this class. This is an encouraging class to tell you, like we said this morning, it ain't over until it's over. So if you blow it today, let's pick up and let's go on. But it's open to whomever, whatever age. It's not age restricted. Love to have everybody in it. And we're starting with James 1 through 4. See you next Sunday.
Thank you, Judy. That'll be exciting. The last thing I have is, most of you probably received my Calling Post message yesterday. We had a couple of families that lost loved ones here a couple days ago. Krista Russell, Krista and Joshua, she lost her mom quite unexpectedly Friday. Actually Thursday night, late Thursday night. Her mom's name is Susan Purser. Her visitation is at Green Hill Funeral Home tomorrow morning from 11 to 1, with the funeral at 1. That's Green Hill Funeral Home tomorrow, 11 to 1, the funeral at 1. And also, Paige Johnston has lost her daddy. Steve won the battle against cancer and is now with the Lord. And so we want to remember Paige and Jamie and the family there. His service, his visitation is at the Rogersville Church of the Nazarene, Rogersville Church of the Nazarene, from 1 to 3 tomorrow. And then the funeral is at 3. So, Krista Russell's mom tomorrow, 11 to 1, 1 o'clock funeral at Green Hill. Steve Leverett, visitation, Rogersville Church of the Nazarene, 1 to 3 tomorrow, with the service at 3 o'clock. Now, before we go any further, you know what? Let's all stand up. We all need to stretch. Find someone near you, and invite them to the spaghetti dinner and say hi while you're at it. Take a couple minutes and meet and greet.
to have moments where God has finally shown me answers to questions I've been having for a little bit, and it's just wonderful. Specifically with my job here as a worship leader, and I'm just so blessed. I'm really excited just to share with you today the music that God has put on our hearts to bring you praise, or to bring Him praise. Stand with me if you will, and let's give some praise. When we think of the scriptures and the words in the Bible, many of them pop out at me a lot of times. Some of my favorite ones are, when I'm feeling low, I'll think of if two or more are present, then He is there also. Which is always a powerful one to me. Which means right now God is sitting in this room with us. God is right here, listening to us praise Him. He's probably sitting right there. I don't know, but it's awesome. And there's so many powerful things. And this song talks about there's power in the name of the Lord. One time I was told that if you ever feel like the devil's got your heart, rebuke him in the name of Jesus Christ. Say, away from me, devil. In the name of Jesus Christ, away from me. You have power over the devil. You have power over an angel. That's right. A fallen angel. That's right. You can rebuke him anytime you want. There's power in the name of the Lord.
Blessed is he
Indescribable, uncontainable.
In our lives, Lord God, that gives us the air that we need to live, the air that we need to breathe. Father in heaven, I know there are those here that maybe are confused, maybe they're not desperate, maybe they're not lost, maybe they don't feel desperate, they don't feel lost, maybe they're just confused, maybe they don't understand. Father, I pray that you would come alongside of those persons today, Lord God, that you would introduce yourself as the real, the living, the hope that we have. The living hope that each and every one of us have. Lord, I pray for those that are suffering loss today. I pray for the families, the Johnston family, the Krista Russell's family. I pray for those, Lord God, that have been lifted up, those that have been brought to my attention. Lord, first I pray for the sickness that has consumed and overwhelmed many young families here. And I pray, Lord, that you would rid them of their illnesses. I pray, continue to lift up Kenny. I continue to lift up Alvin, Father. I lift up those that are facing surgeries, such as Tommy, our musician. I lift up those, Lord God, that are suffering from broken bones, such as Norma Carpenter. I pray for Tanya Holden. I pray for our board elections today. I pray for our spaghetti dinner today. Father, we have many needs. We have many requests. But our greatest need, our greatest request is for eternal life. Our greatest need is our salvation. Our greatest need is forgiveness and mercy. Our greatest need is to be covered by the blood of Christ, the Christ of the cross. Father, I pray for those who are not covered today. I pray for those, Lord God, that again, this is all kind of confusing. Lord, I pray that you would become real to those persons in a very personal, a very intimate way. Lord, that when they walk away from you, Lord, that they would walk away a different people. They would walk away a changed people. They would walk away a new creation. The old man has fallen away. Lord, I thank you. I thank you for your word. I thank you, Lord God, that each and every day I can sit and I can spend time in your daily word, and it feeds me. It feeds me as manna from heaven. And through your word, Lord, I sense your presence, even when I'm by myself. I sense it is your word. I sense it is the living God's word that is speaking to me. Father, may your word speak to us today. May your word change us today. May your word convict us today. And may we too leave a changed people. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen. At this time, all the children are dismissed for children's service. I'm excited today. We are kicking off a new series called Life Lessons from Mayberry. Don't go there. How many of you ever grew up watching the Merv Griffin? The Andy Griffith Show? How many of you still watch the Andy Griffith Show? Well, we're going to start a series today to learn some lessons from Sheriff Andy Taylor. This past week I was doing some surfing on the internet and I just stumbled across one particular website that listed the 10 worst TV shows for children. And I don't even remember if this was in ranking order or random or what, but here they are. South Park, Family Guy, American Dad, Robot Chicken, Drawn Together, Fanboy and Chum Chum, Fanboy and Chum Chum, that's it. Big Brother, Beavis and Butthead, Breadwinners, and Walking Dead. Really? Now, call me old-fashioned, but imagine you sitting down with your family to a good old Beavis and Butthead marathon. What life lessons do you think you'd glean from that? How to be sexist, how to be racist, how to be vulgar, how to be violent. But now I want you to imagine sitting down every night with your family to an episode of the Andy Griffith Show. And then sitting with your family afterwards and talking about it.
We do that.
Amen. Well, that's what we're going to do here. That's exactly what we're going to do here. For the next couple of months, we're going to gather around the TV set, for at least 2 or 3 minutes anyway, and we're going to pick up on some life lessons that not only we can teach our children, but more importantly, that we can apply to our own lives. Let's watch the first one this morning.
The Andy Griffith Show.
You'll watch this, brother man. There's a guy in that bush that throws a rock instead of Opie.
Yes, sir, you the boy's father? That's right, Simon Winkler, Andy Taylor. Now then, what's this all about?
249A, section Roman numeral 5. Passenger carrying wheeled vehicle making passage and or transcending area designated for pedestrian traffic only. Suspect duly warned, flaunted said warning, and ignoring same repeated offense within a 24-hour period.
All right, so he rode his bike on the sidewalk.
I was there, Mr. Winkler. Arnold was given a warning and continued to ride his bicycle on the sidewalk.
The offense was clearly defined under normal weather conditions.
Just play it wrong. I wasn't hurting anybody.
People are coming in and out of stores on Main Street every minute. You never know when somebody's going to walk right out in front of you.
Everybody's against me.
Now you see what you've done? You got the boy all upset. Was it such a crime? Seems to me you people would have more important things to do than go around frightening children.
Now look here, Mr. Winkler. Arnold was warned and continued to ride his bicycle on the sidewalk. Now we're going to impound that bicycle if he learns to use it according to regulation.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Can't you see this is a very sensitive child? Obviously, you don't understand it. Arnold's a good boy. You just don't understand it.
Oh, I think I understand it.
He's a good boy, really. A little high-spirited, perhaps, but weren't we all at his age?
I wasn't.
Law's the law, Mr. Winkler. Now, if we don't teach children to live in society today, what's going to happen to them when they grow up?
For heaven's sake, Sheriff, the boy's not a criminal.
I didn't say he was. Now, what he does at home is none of our business. But when he gets out on the street, he's going to have to answer to us. I can show you in the statute book. The minimum punishment for this offense is impounding the bicycle for 1 year.
Well, you can't do it. I demand you return that bike and now.
Now, you look here. You're that boy's father. You're responsible for his actions. Now, he's too young to be locked up. But if you're not going to take responsibility, maybe I ought to lock you up. You ever think of that?
Yeah, well, my daddy is scared of that, are you? Make him put you in jail. That'll show him. Go on, Dad. Show him
You want me to lock your father up?
He ain't a tidy up. I don't want to lose my brand new bike. I just got it.
You'd rather I put your father in jail.
I want my bike.
Sheriff, there won't be any need to impound that bike.
How's that?
I'd like to have it. I want to sell it.
Sell it. You're going to sell my bike?
That's right, Arnold.
But it's my bike. You can't sell my bike.
Be quiet, Arnold.
Marty, you want to go get the bicycle?
Oh.
No. I won't let you. You can't do that.
Arnold, be quiet.
Mr. Winkler, would you like to continue this father and son discussion in quiet?
Huh?
I say, would you like to continue this in quiet? There's a real nice woodshed out back.
Woodshed?
Mm-hmm.
Good old-fashioned woodshed?
Real nice.
Hmm? Come on, Arnold.
No, I want my bike. I want my bike. Is Ernie going to get spanked, Paul?
Don't you think he deserves it?
I don't want to say. After all, he is one of my own kind.
I was tickled with Jeff's discussion in Sunday school where he was talking about how this world, in this world, we seem like we're swimming upstream. Seems like we're swimming against the current, against the tide that the world is taking. How it went to cheeseburgers, I don't know, but my point is that's exactly why I chose this series. Is because they're right. He's right. It seems like, what started as just a slope, what started as just a little skid has become a snowball toward immorality. And that's exactly where we're headed. All of that flow just flows into an open sea of rejection, of rebellion, and of immorality. And so what I wanted to do is the same thing Jeff was trying to do in Sunday school. As I try to do every Sunday, I'm just trying to equip us. And so these next, I think 8 or 9 messages are going to be geared toward looking at the world and looking at us as believers in contrast. Now, I chose that particular clip to start the series because it really does start at the beginning. All of the things, all of the life lessons that we're going to be looking at in the next couple of months are irrelevant or unmeaningful or temporary if we don't first take responsibility for ourselves. We live in a world, in a society that is filled with excuse makers, victim seekers, and blame throwers. And it's not getting any better, just as they talked about in Sunday school. And no one seems to take responsibility for themselves anymore. Arnold, in the video clip, he claimed that the whole world was against him. And then his dad jumped on the bandwagon and started making excuses for his bad behavior. The sad part of this whole skit here, or this whole clip, is unlike, now in the scene you just saw, his dad finally comes to his senses. But that's just not real life today. Imagine that scene taking place today. What would have happened? Well, the father probably would have launched across the desk and seek retaliation for hurting his child's feelings. Isn't that what we see on kids' ball fields and hockey rinks? What are we teaching our kids when we badmouth the refs? What are we teaching our kids when we slug the coach simply because he made our kid cry? or she made our kid cry. What exactly are we teaching them? More importantly, here's the real question. How are they getting away with it? Why are they getting away with it? I shared with you once before when I was in Korea. Austin was 4 years old. And Nan had to take away his Power Ranger figures and ban him from watching the show. Because he was ambushing his sisters and fly kicking them as they come around the corner. As I said, in the scene, the dad comes to his senses. What are we doing to rid our kids of this societal failure that we have created? He went to the woodshed. What are we doing? What are we doing to slow the current, to change the direction of the tide that the nation is going in? I'm going to be honest with you. Since most of them seem to live in the same state of entitlement, I don't think we are. I don't think we're doing a very good job of it. But rather than beat up on our kids for the next 30 minutes, I would rather attack the root cause. You and me. First point in your bulletin this morning is that taking responsibility is a choice. Jesus said in his Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew chapter 5, beginning verse 38, he said, "You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you." Verse 43, "You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your Father in heaven is perfect." You've heard me say, even as recently as a couple weeks ago, while we may have no control over things that happen to us, we have every bit of control over how we respond to it. My response is my responsibility. Say that with me. My response is my responsibility. Do you believe it, though? Do you believe that your response is completely and solely your responsibility? It is. And that's exactly the point Jesus makes here. He says no matter if someone slaps you, if someone steals from you, or even someone forces you to do something against your will, he says do what they want. Do what they want. He says do exactly as you would wish they would do for you. That's the golden rule. Believe it or not, regardless of what happens, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of your situation, you do have a choice. Now, Jesus is not suggesting that we become doormats. Don't misunderstand that. He's not suggesting that we become doormats, but he is telling us that each and every one of us has the ability to choose how we will respond to others, how we will respond to situations. We don't have to respond out of some emotional spasm, but instead we can make godly choices, even in the face of ungodly people and ungodly circumstances. That was the example of the disciple Stephen. So what are you teaching your kids when you complain about your boss? What are you teaching your kids when you complain about your circumstances? What are you teaching your kids when you return sharp words for sharp words, or worse, fists for fists? What are you teaching your kids when you go through life looking for ways to be offended or to be wrong? What are you teaching your kids when you complain that your feelings got hurt? Or you complain about the music at church because it's too loud, or too soft, too fast, or too slow? What are you teaching your kids when you complain that the sermon is too long? Personally, I've never had anybody complain my sermon's too short. I hope you'll indulge me and forgive my frankness for just a moment today. But you, sir, you, ma'am, need to pull up your big boy pants, your big girl pants, and do adult. Let me say that again. Because some of you need to hear it. You need to pull up your big boy pants, your big girl pants, and do adult. The Roman Catholic Church got angry with Galileo because he insisted that the earth revolved around the sun. Some of you all need to fess up, pony up, and belly up and realize the earth doesn't revolve around you. All right, I'll quit preaching. The bottom line, as Jesus put it, you have a choice. Each and every one of us has a choice. In Deuteronomy, God said through Moses, He says, let me get there. In Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, He says, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live." The choices that you make regarding things that happen to you not only affect your kids, but they will have a profound effect on your personal relationship with God. I shared with you very recently, as long as your focus is on you, as long as your attention is on you, you will never be content, because you will always be slave to what you want. And because you won't get what you want, you won't be settled with what you have. Secondly, in your bulletin, taking responsibility is a necessity. Charles O'Byrne was a top aide to New York's Governor David Peterson some years back. He was busted for failing to file his income taxes 5 years in a row. You know what his reason was? He suffered from late filing syndrome. Look it up. I'm not lying. He suffered from late filing syndrome brought on by depression. Now, while the depression did not seem to affect his ability to function as a highly successful professional, nor did that depression seem to prevent him from enjoying a very active social life, that depression did prevent him from filing for his taxes 5 years in a row. We live in a society that is full of victims. Our courts are overfilled and overworked with frivolous lawsuits. And we have an official diagnosis for virtually everything. An addiction, an anomaly, an abnormality. And if we can't come up with a name for it, we'll just call it a syndrome. We go through life blaming this person. We go through life blaming that circumstance. Virtually everything that happens bad to us, or every wrong choice that we're making, is somebody else's fault. It's some other circumstances is the reason. When are we going to stop placing blame on anywhere but where it needs to be? And that's the person that we look at each and every morning in the mirror. Michael Jackson produced a song some years back about that very point. He says, "I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. We have got to stop making excuses for bad choices. We have got to stop placing the blame on anywhere other than squarely on our shoulders. We need to stop blaming others for things that we're responsible for. We need to quit relying on government for handouts, payouts, and bailouts just to pick up the slack for the bad choices that we've made. We need to look at ourselves squarely and say, you're responsible for you, Randy. You're responsible for you, Angie. You're responsible for you, Tyler. We've got to take ownership for bad choices. I want you to notice something. I've yet to call them mistakes. Because even the word mistake takes responsibility off my shoulders. You see, me spilling my coffee is a mistake. But me throwing my coffee at the wall out of responding to somebody that hurt me, that's a choice. These aren't mistakes, these are bad choices. And since I quoted Michael Jackson, I might as well go ahead and quote an atheist as well. Susan Jacoby wrote a book called The Age of American Unreason. And in it, she's talking about people who profoundly believe that they are losers, always losers in life. And she called them injustice collectors. She said, number one, they endlessly repeat how others have mistreated them. They view the world as hostile and unfair to them. They are beachcombers of misery who see each grievance as a treasure to add to their collection. They have a hidden need to feel wrong. And finally, they live by the childish notion that life should always be fair to them. I hope I didn't step on anybody's toes there just now. Now, I don't want to BS up. I don't want to BS up too bad because some of you haven't even had your second cup of coffee yet. So let me smooth the sled a little bit. It's not all your fault. It's not all our fault for blaming others. Because we can trace that all the way back to the garden in Genesis chapter 3. Right? Remember? Genesis chapter 3. When Adam was confronted, what did he say? He said, the woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it. He's saying, look, it's not my fault. You put me on this earth with this immoral creature. What did you expect? You see, first he blamed his wife, then he blamed God. And it always comes down to God, doesn't it? It always comes down to blaming God, doesn't it? I mean, we'll start there, but we'll always wind up here. It's like God is our personal punching bag. We find ourselves in a room full of George Foremans, and when George starts swinging, none of us swing back unless you have a death wish. We just go into the locked bathroom and we start punching on the punching bag. Why? Because we know it won't punch back. Right? Newsflash. God will punch back. And one day, God is going to call you to the carpet. You see, God is a patient God, but we have mistaken His patience for ignorance. But God knows everything that's going on in your life, and He hears everything that you're saying. He said in Proverbs 15:3, He said, the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. One day, mark my words, in fact, put it in ink in your Bible, one day God's going to come calling expecting payment for all those jabs you took. And you, my friend, will wish you were back in that room full of Georges. We need to take responsibility for our actions. We need to take responsibility for our lives. Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step recovery program that was modeled after the secular AA. But some of you might not know this. AA was actually originally a Christian organization. But they removed the Christian element out of it to appeal to the masses. And, think what you want about that. One of the things that AA didn't change is their first step. Anyone know the first step? Stop denying. Stop denying. We are powerless over everything that happens to us, but we are not powerless in how we respond. That is a choice. Bad things happen. Say that with me. Bad things happen. Turn to your neighbor and say it. Bad things happen. What about bad things? They happen. Bad things happen. Loss is a fact of life. Some people lose their jobs. Some people lose their 401s. Some people lose their shorts. Some people lose their homes. Some people lose their way. And yes, some people even lose their loved ones. Bad things happen. But when you experience loss in your life, even great loss, there are still only how many choices? 2. We can either look at it as a tragedy from which we'll never recover and we will live defeated lives until they put us in the ground, or we can look at them as an indicator from God that He wants to take us to someplace greater. And it is this valley that He walks through with us that helps us to get there, that prepares us to get us there. Those are the only 2 choices you have. It doesn't mean that God caused it. Please don't misunderstand that. God didn't cause it, but God allowed it. And it's not that God allowed it so that you might suffer, but God allowed it so that He could use that to prepare you for what is yet to come, for the place that He wants to take you. Now, all of that doesn't just happen. It doesn't just point to those bad things that happen to us. God uses consequences for bad choices too. Many of you were here 9.5 years ago when our daughter Emily quit school. And on her 18th birthday left home and married a con artist. I've shared with you before, it was the darkest time of our lives. The hardest thing for her mom and I to do is to close our door on her and not allow communication with her. Not because we didn't love her, but because she was walking in darkness. Well, today, Emily is a very successful realtor and a successful small businesswoman, and she's married to a great guy. And yes, she's walking with God. What changed? What changed about Emily? It wasn't her circumstances. What changed was her. You see, God had to humble Emily and make her take responsibility for her bad choices, to make her take responsibility for her actions. And if that's you today, if you're going around in circles because you've nailed your own foot to the floor, I want you to know something. God's got a crowbar. And He wants to take the nail out. Will it hurt? How many of you ever had to pull a nail out of your foot? It'll hurt. Change hurts. Say that with me. Change hurts. But taking responsibility is a necessity if you are going to change. You must first take responsibility. You cannot change without taking responsibility. That must come first. It is a necessity. Now, before we close, I want to take you back to the garden for just a minute. I want to go back to the Garden of Eden and with Adam and Eve for just a minute. Now, we already know how Adam responded by blaming his wife and by blaming God. And so after he blames Eve, his wife, God turns to Eve. In verse 13, God says, "What is this you have done?" And here's how Eve responds. "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." The serpent deceived me, and I ate. Now, throughout Scripture, we are told that it is because of Adam's sin that you and I have a fallen nature. It is because of Adam's sin that you and I must fight our flesh until the day we enter the Lord. I don't want to twist Scripture today. I don't want you to misunderstand where I'm going this morning. It is given fact that it was Adam who was given the command not to eat of the tree. Eve was not even created yet. And so Adam had responsibility over his wife. Woo-hoo. Okay? You with me? Guys? You with me? But I want you to listen to Eve's confession again. The serpent deceived me, and I ate. Now, when Adam was confronted, he blamed and he lied. But there was not even the first hint of falsehood in Eve's confession. The serpent did deceive her, and she did eat. King Frederick II was an 18th century king of Prussia. And one day he went to the prison in Berlin. And as soon as he entered into the prison, it was like a free-for-all. All the men just crowded around him, pleading their innocence, that they were unjustly imprisoned, they never should have been there, and they were wronged by the courts. Everybody was piling in, piling on, all except for one guy over in the corner. He was just sitting there quietly. The king walked over to him. He says, "What are you here for?" The man said, "Armed robbery, Your Honor." The king said, "Are you guilty?" "Oh, yes, sir. I'm absolutely guilty and absolutely deserving of the punishment I received." And at that, the king just jumped up and hollered for the guards and said, "Hurry up and come to release him before he corrupts all of these innocent men." For all of eternity, Adam will be known for creating our fallen nature. But you know something? I can't help but to think that with Eve's confession, say, "I did that God did not look on her with favor. I cannot help but believe that that did not work out on her behalf. Now, we're not told what happened to Adam other than the fact that he lived 930 years and died. But I would like to think that Adam learned a life lesson from Eve at this point. And that life lesson is this: nothing in your world will change until you change. So maybe that's you today. Whether your situation today is homegrown or circumstances have been thrust upon you, nothing will change in your world until you make the change. Until you stop denying your responsibility and you truly seek true change. Only then. You know, you can blame your wife, you can blame your husband, you can blame your circumstances, you can even blame your God. But in the end, all of that blaming will leave you exactly where you are right now. Spinning in this middle of that room called self-pity. But when you're ready to quit denying and make real change, God can then take that confession and He can prepare you to do great, great things. In you, to you, and through you. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you. Thank you for your tough words. Thank you for the truth. It is said that the truth will set us free. Father, there are those amongst us, there are those that maybe are not even here, who need to own up, who need to do adult and take responsibility for bad choices, take responsibility for their past, take responsibility for their situation. And confess openly to you, saying, the serpent deceived me. I did that. That's all me. Father, I pray that as we embark on this journey together, this series of contrast between this world and your world, I pray, Father in heaven, that you would lean on some folks here. That you would convict some folks here, Lord God, to look in the mirror and make a change. But it's only when we finally decide to take responsibility for ourselves can you then move in and do what only you can do. I pray now, Father, for this election that is about to take place. I pray for our offering. I pray, Father in heaven, that you would be in the midst and that your will be done. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Let me get the ushers come forward. We'll take up our offering, and then I'll get the ushers right back and hand you out the bullet, all right, let's go ahead. Angie, can I see you up here? Jewel, would you mind coming up? The rest of us will be right behind you. Or if you want to stay here, that's fine too. Just